If you're hearing noise in the background, my dog is playing with his tennis ball right now, and he's having a field day out in the hallway. So that's what's going on out there. The topic of today's video, as I'm sure you got from the title, is addressing the typical secular arguments presented by the pro-life atheists. While they do make up a very small segment of the non-religious community, it was brought to my attention once again when a pro-life atheist found a recent pro-abortion video of mine and was engaging with people in the comments. Right, so a pregnant person evicting something that they don't want inside their body is wrong, or a person just supporting the choice of other people being able to decide that they don't want something inside their body. Yeah, that is worthy of murder. Wait, murdering the... joking about murdering the person who feels that way, that people should have a choice. But you're pro-life, the thing, aren't you? Wait a minute. I don't understand your morals. Like, I don't get it. It also kind of fascinates me that majority of pro-life people are religious, and they would in fact tell you that morality comes from religion and that morality is objective. But y'all seem like really confused about everything. Like, all of your stances are just confusing. So I will be addressing some of the comments that this specific atheist said, but this isn't a video that is like directly responding to them. And some of the points that I bring up might not be the entirety of the pro-life atheist movement. Basically, I'm not going into this assuming that every pro-life atheist is on the left side of politics, even though many of them are. There are also, in fact, right-wing atheists, so I want to address pretty much any argument that can be viewed as secular on the basis that it is not dependent on religious beliefs or ideologies. That said, even though these arguments are in fact separated from religion, many of these points, when talking about abortion specifically, are talking points that are also commonly used by the religious right. I am also going to be doing my makeup throughout this video, inspired by this topic, so I hope you enjoy that as well. So let's go ahead and start with the most common thing that I hear, which is that the fetus is equally a part of the human life cycle in the same way that, say, a toddler is, or a teenager, or an elderly person. Obviously, this belief implies that the fetus is in fact a human being with its own right to personhood, just as much as any other person, or in this case, a pregnant person. First off, the terms human and human being are not always interchangeable. They can be, but not always. Something can be human and have human DNA, but not be an individual with a right to personhood, let alone a right to personhood that would exceed the rights of another. For example, if I accidentally cut off my finger, that finger would still, in fact, be characterized as human. It would also contain human DNA. Now, of course, that does not actually make it a human being with a right to personhood. Uh-oh.
I have contacts, but they're like they're like years old. They haven't been open or anything, but they're definitely not the right prescription. But then again, my glasses prescription for a lot of my glasses that I wear is also old, so maybe it wouldn't be that bad if I just like put them in next time I do this, because I'm having trouble reading my script while also trying to do my makeup.
Now, the predictable response to this would be, well, Brina, your finger, your decapitated finger, doesn't have the ability to turn into a separate individual human being. And you would be correct in that fact. They would also probably say, in their perspective, that a fetus is already a human being. And they'll usually say this typically at the point of fertilization or implantation, usually one of those two. You know what else is in fact a human being? your deceased great-great-grandfather that is presumably rotting in the ground. Also, any person that is medically declared to be brain dead is also, in fact, a human being. You see, the point I'm trying to make here is that the mere act of being a human being doesn't give said human being a right to personhood that exceeds the rights of another. I say this despite the fact that in their view, that could be or is very well what they want, especially since taking away people's with uteruses right to bodily autonomy does actually grant corpses more rights over their deceased body than any pregnant person in existence. Those persons in existence, by the way, who were very much alive on more than just a cellular or molecular level. Circling back to the belief that a fertilized egg has rights to personhood on the basis of being part of the human life cycle and is also thereby a human being, I think the basis for such assertions really comes down to the question of when does human life begin? Before we try answering that, let's start with defining what exactly we mean by life. Also, I know you guys probably can't see what I'm doing right now because of the light, but you'll be able to see it soon. So, a sperm is alive, right? The skin cells on our nose are also alive. But if we viewed the life of skin cells on our nose to being equivalent to the life of a living, breathing human being with its own bodily autonomy, well, we would be committing mass genocide every time we scratched our noses. Same goes with cisgender men every time they have happy me time. So all of that said, obviously we are not talking about human life on merely a cellular, molecular level, right? And even though a fertilized egg does, in fact, have its own DNA separate from that of the pregnant person, do we think that's enough to define personhood? And is being a part of the human life cycle enough to obtain personhood? I certainly don't think so. Do you? Because despite it being a part of the human life cycle, that life does not, in fact, belong to the fetus. It belongs to that of the pregnant person hosting it. More on that later. Let's talk about when we think human life with personhood begins. The correct answer is over time. Anything else is either purposefully dishonest or a direct result of miseducation. Arthur Kaplan, a professor and founding head of the Division of Medical Ethics in New York University, once said, "Many scientists would say that they don't know when life begins. There are a series of landmark moments. The first is conception. The second is the development of the spine. The third is development of the brain, which includes consciousness, and so on." And quite frankly, even those pro-lifers, whether they're atheist or religious, that instead want to define life as beginning when the heartbeat is detectable, both are being deceived by their emotional attachment to the embryo. Because guess what? Embryos don't have hearts. Skimming over the fact that the function of a human heart is to pump blood, which does not at all signify sentience or human consciousness, as both are only truly detectable in the brain.
I'm waiting for it to dry.
What a fetal heartbeat actually detects is pulsing cells, cardiac activity, and what may eventually become cardiac cells. According to Jennifer Kearns, who is an OBGYN and a professor at the University of California in San Francisco, from very early on, different cells are programmed to do different things for what will eventually become a fully functioning human body. These are cells programmed with electrical activity, which will eventually control the heart rate. They send a signal telling the heart to contract once there is a heart. So that is the activity that is being detected through ultrasounds, not the heartbeat of a functioning human heart. Now let's discuss what I said earlier, in that the cellular molecular life of a fetus belongs to that of the pregnant person. Even if you want to grant personhood rights to a fertilized egg, and even go as far as to define it as a human being, in any society that values equality, no human being can ever be granted rights that exceed the rights of another. If someone asks me to donate one of my kidneys in order for them to live, I am in no way obligated to give them one of my kidneys. In the same sense, just because you view a pregnancy as the act of someone hosting another human being in their body does not mean that said pregnant person is then obligated to donate their body and their uterus to another human being. Disagreeing with that sentiment and saying, no, in fact, a pregnant person does have the obligation to do just that, means that you believe the rights of any pregnant person can and should be compromised for the life of someone else. So to the person who told me that, I don't believe these human beings should have rights because I don't understand that they are human beings. No, honey, I don't care if fetuses are human beings, because no human being has a right to life that is dependent on the continuous and active use of my organs, let alone my consent to the act of continuing a pregnancy and carrying it to full term. A procedure that is particularly dangerous in America. And going off of that thought, is there a life-threatening risk to obtaining an abortion? Absolutely, as there typically is with any medical procedure. And even more so if you take away people's access to safe abortions. The big difference here is that if I am consenting to having an abortion, I am thereby withdrawing my consent to continue a pregnancy, let alone going through childbirth. I am consenting to either one or the other. I should be able to not consent to having an abortion, just as I should be able to not consent to continue being pregnant. So anyone who's arguing against abortions because they're a risk seems incredibly ignorant to me. Especially since I believe the most current official maternal mortality rate in the US is 17.4 deaths per 100,000 births, and that's just from 2018. According to the CDC, each year as many as 700 people die during pregnancy alone or the year after. Another 50,000 people each year experience severe pregnancy complications that can cause serious consequences to their health. Keep in mind as well that these rates have been notoriously underreported, and that there are also a number of systematic issues when we look at the disproportionate rate that people of color die during childbirth in comparison to white people. Black people, for example, are 3 times more likely to die of pregnancy-related causes than white people. However, even if these discrepancies were more so in the range of other modern, wealthy, and developed countries, so not completely goddamn abysmal, that wouldn't change the fact that there will always be risks when it comes to pregnancy and childbirth. Any pregnant person that is living in a society that prioritizes equality should always hold the right to withdraw their consent in staying pregnant, regardless of any outside risk that is associated with having abortions. Anyways, I hope this helped you understand our side maybe a little bit better. Do I put a darker lipstick over it or do I not? Let's try it. Also, fun fact, I have to teach a bunch of third graders in like 3 hours, which means all of this is gonna have to go. But it was fun while it lasted. Also, I hope you guys enjoyed this makeup look, by the way. First time I ever tried this, so I think I could have done better right here, but that's okay. And thank you to everyone who made it to the end of this video. Please like and share it, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. Lastly, I want to shout out all my lovely top patrons. We have Queen of Beams as my one and only rice reader, Phelan S, and Birdie as my Rice Crisp snacks, Courtney, Elaine C, Lore, and Sarah Z as my mod mates, and a special thank you to all of my other patrons who will be listed at the end of this video. Stay safe, stay well, and I'll catch you in the next one.